Hi crafters, it's Chloe from Chloe's Creative Cards, and today I've got a bit of a 2-for-1 project to show you. So we are going to be using the Shooting Star stamp and die set from the Gilded Christmas collection, but I thought I would show you the same technique but how we can make 2 different projects with using that technique. So one of the cards we're going to be recreating is going to be similar to this gorgeous project from Christine, and then I'm also going to show you how you can scale this down as well and use the techniques that I've shown you to create a smaller project if that's what you'd like to do, because that's kind of the whole idea behind our YouTube videos. We can show you how to create all of these beautiful projects and cards, but then you can put your own spin on it at home, and quite often we cram a lot of techniques into our demos because we want to show you as much as we possibly can, but sometimes you can just take one small element and then create a beautiful project at home. So we're going to dive on in and get started. So I'll pop the little overhead camera in so that you can see what I am doing. I'm going to start off, as always, by building up our mats and layers. So to start off with, I've got an 8x8 card blank, and I've got a piece of silver mirror card. So we're going to start by sticking this on with some foam pads. So again, I'm using our foam pads on a roll, which I use all the time. These are the 2mm ones that I'm using today. So just going to pop these onto the back. You want to make sure you've got plenty of foam pads on there so that it's nice and balanced as well. And then we'll peel the back off of these. I like to make a little pile of the mess next to me there. And then we're just going to position that down onto our card blank here. Like so. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to pop that to one side, and I've created it so it's like a top folding card. Okay, so we'll pop that down to one side. And then next up, I've got a piece of our lovely crystal white pearl card. So the first piece I cut down to about 7 3/4 inches. This one I've cut down to 7.5 inches square. I'm going to grab a little bit of scrap paper in just to do my edging. So to do that, we are going to use our glass slipper glitter, which is beautiful. So this is that really fine kind of chrome-like silver with that crystallinery element mixed in. And then we're going to take a chisel tip glue pen. So I'm just going to press this down so we've got a bit of glue coming out. And we're going to drag that along the edge of the card. Now, if you drag that glue pen towards yourself at about a 45-degree angle, so you want to hold it still, and then you want to drag that pen like that. That is how you're going to be able to get that nice straight line just going along the edge of your mat and layer. Oops, gone right off track there. I'm doing this one quite kind of thick as well, to be honest. So just working down. I'm not too worried if it's a little bit wonky because, of course, we've got another layer that we are going to pop onto the top. We dunk this in just like this. Cover that with your glitter and you can see how beautiful that then looks there. So pop that over to one side again, and then I've taken one of the lovely papers from the Gilded Christmas paper pad, and this is one of those foiled designs. I'm just going to go along the edge of here. Again, I'm doing a slightly finer border on this one with my glue pen like that. And then we're going to go in with that little pot of glitter and just dunk the edges like that. So we've got a little glittery border going all the way around the edge of there. So again, we're going to grab our foam pads and get this all stuck together. So this is a 3-dimensional project, but of course, if you are posting or anything like that, you can stick some of these layers on flat. You don't have to stick them all on with foam pads like I am here. So a few foam pads on the back of there. Peel the backs away. Pop that down. Just get that layer stuck on there. And then we're going to take our next one, which is our lovely foiled layer. Going to add our foam pads. onto the back of there. And then we'll peel those backs away. I've got a little pile of rubbish next to me, that's why I just keep pulling that a little bit off camera. And there we go. And I'll just pop all this rubbish in the bin before we get that stuck on. And there we are. Okay then. So then we'll stick this one down onto our base card. Like that. And then you can see how that's starting to come together. So I'm going to pop that over to one side. I'm going to move my scrap paper out of the way. And we're going to grab in our gilded square dies. So we're going to use the second one in. So this one here. I'm going to use a piece of crystal white pearl card. I'm going to start off by taping this down into place onto our crystal white pearl card. So I'm going to pop that there and there. And then I'm going to use my die cutting machine. So I'm just going to use my base plate, my plastic shim and my cutting plate for this one. So we're going to send that through our Gemini. Off it goes. There we go, you can see that going through there. I'll pop the overhead back in. Give that a little wiggle and there we have our beautiful gilded square ready to start and stamp onto and glitter. So we're going to start off, we've got our stamps. So I'm going to use that lovely large shooting star first up. So this one here, okay, and I've got my little anti-static bag here. So I'm going to give my card a good just over, first of all, just to get rid of any fingerprints, any oils or residue that may be on there. And then I'm going to grab that shooting star stamp in and I'm going to use my Wow Clear Embossing ink pad. We're going to ink up the stamp. So lots of tapping all over the image. And then I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to grab my gilded square in. I'm going to start off by just stamping one in the bottom corner here. So we're just going to hover and then press. So you want firm, even pressure all over the image. And then we're going to lift that off. We will grab a piece of scrap paper in. And we're going to cover this with some embossing powder. So the one that I'm using is one of my favourites. It's one of my Wow embossing glitters. And this one is called Mercury Glass. And it's the most beautiful kind of warm silver colour, which is really, really pretty. So we've got that first image stamped there. Let me bring that back in so you can see. So now we're going to use our heat tool and just heat this up. There we go, and then we'll take our little anti-static bag again. I'm going to dust the other side. We're going to take our stamp in. I'm going to re-ink this up. Then we're going to position that stamp just in the opposite corner here and press. So again, you want firm, even pressure all over that image. And then we're going to lift that off. And then we're going to take our Mercury Glass powder. Sprinkle that over the top. You can see I've got some real inky fingers there. So before I heat this up, I'm going to take a paintbrush and just dust away any little excess particles there. There we go. And then we'll heat that up again. Let me grab that back in. So just holding that heat gun still until you see that powder start to melt and change. And then you are going to move the heat gun over the image, like that. Okay, a little bit more there. And that's all nicely heated up there now. Okay, so you can see how we've got this beautiful shooting star design on our little gilded square there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take that anti-static bag, and again, because I know I've got my oily fingerprints all over there, we're going to give this a really good dust over. Okay, and then within the stamp set you get these like little star stamps. So we're going to use the little dotty one first, but we're going to start and build a bit of a background up around this. So we're going to take this little kind of dotty star stamp, okay, and we're going to start to just position this down just kind of into the background. So just dotting your stars around like this. Okay, and then let's have one here. Maybe pop one here. There's a little one there, maybe. So it's probably quite hard for you to see at home, but I can just very faintly see where that ink is. Okay, so I'm quite happy with where I've positioned those. So when I sprinkle over my embossing powder again, you'll then see that these will reveal themselves, the little stars in the background. Okay, so again, anywhere where I've got a few little fingerprints, I'm just going to go in with a paintbrush and just brush that embossing powder away. Then that's going to go straight back into my jar, and then we'll heat this bit up next. So let's get rid of that little bit excess there. So then you're going to go in with your heat tool, and again just hold your heat gun still over those areas and heat this up. There we go. So you can see how that's starting to build that background up. So what I'm going to do now is swap the little star out for another one. So this is the smaller one from the set. Again, good dust over with an anti-static bag. And then any little kind of gaps, I'm going to go in and just fill. Notice how I'm leaving the centre quite plain because I have got a sentiment to go in the middle of there, so I'm not stressing too much about that. But you can go in and just add as many of these little stars as you like, and then we're going to grab our gilded square back in, sprinkle over that powder. Going to go back into the jar. Okay, let me grab that back in and I'll heat this up. There we go. So that is our kind of background all built up with those beautiful stars. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start and glitter this up a little bit. So I'm only going to use 2 glitters on this one because, like I say, I'm doing a variation on the lovely card that Christine's done. So I'm going to use Diamante Sparkle and Glass Slipper for this. So what I'm going to do is take my PVA glue with my fine tip applicator. Okay, and we're going to start off by going in and just tracing the stars. I'm just going to do a small section of this to show you all as well, because I have got one that I've already done that's nice and dry. So you're going to go in and just trace into the centre of these, like this. And then on the kind of starry trails, what you're going to do is just do dots with your PVA. So you're just going to follow the trails on here. Dead easy to do. Again, you don't have to be spot on either. It's kind of a rough follow. Like that, and then we can glitter these little stars as well. Okay, and then I'm going to cover that with my Diamante Sparkle glitter. And then you can see how that adds that bling and sparkle onto that part of the star. So I'm going to pop that one to one side now, because like I say, I've got one that I've already done that is completely dry. So if I bring that one in and have a little look at that. So I've glittered up the trails and the stars, and then these smaller stars in the background, I've done those with glass slipper just to give a little bit of a different texture. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the little border around the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quickie glue pen. So you can get these on Amazon and things like that. And we're going to use a finer glitter. So we're going to use the Stardust Silver Glitter. Now, if you haven't seen our Stardust glitters, they are magical. You get so much crammed into a pot, and they've got like a sand-like texture, but they are super sparkly. And if you shine a torch or like a flashlight on them, it gives a totally different effect. So they are totally different to all of the other glitters that we've got. But because they're super fine, you can use them with your glue pens as well. So in this little tram line that we've got going around the edge of the gilded square, we're just going to go in and trace. And then cover with that glitter. And then you can see how we can create that really twinkly border going along the edge. So again, in with your glue pen, drag that along. I might have just gone outside the tram line there. I have looked, but we'll style it out, it's fine. And then like that. There we go. And then we're going to just keep working round, sticking in this kind of little line, like this. There we go. So you can see how we've got our little glittery border going around the outside there. So I'm going to park that to one side for now. And next up, I am going to grab in, let me find the little bit that I've got, some white card and a double-sided adhesive sheet. I feel like I've stolen this piece of white card and it might be for the next demo. No, I don't think it is. I think we're good. Let me just double check. Because remember, we're doing a 2-for-1 today. We're good. We can use this little bit. So we've got some double-sided adhesive sheet here, which I'm just going to stick onto my piece of card. And then I've got my little die from the Shooting Star stamp and die set. So let me tape this down into place. So I'm taping it off the double-sided as well, just to make sure that sticks. Okay, and then we're going to send this through our die cutting machine. So I'm going to use my base plate, my metal shim, my plastic shim, a die, cutting plate on the top. Off we trot. There we go. So that is just going through my die cutting machine now. And then we will grab that when it comes out the other side. There we go. Oh, it's just moved a little bit. It's all good though, because I've got some that I've prepared earlier. Get my pokey tool. So you're going to push little stars out. Okay, and then because we've coated that white card with the double-sided adhesive, that then makes those sticky. So we can take our star and we'll take our glass slipper and our Diamante Sparkle glitter. So I'm going to take Diamante Sparkle first. I'm going to take my star, I'm going to peel this away and then dunk that into the glitter. Like that, so that then creates the little outline. And then the inner one will dunk into a little bit of glass slipper. Like that. There we go. And then the smaller ones, I've dunked all those into some Diamante Sparkle. But like I say, I've got that already done. So let me move those out of the way. Okay. We'll grab our base card back in. So we're going to grab this one in here. And you can kind of decide where you want your stars positioned. Do you want them this way? I quite like it that way, I think. I'm going to go that way. So I'm going to get this stuck on with just some foam pads. So we'll use the foam pads here. I'm going to put plenty on here just to keep it nice and balanced because we don't want it sinking. Okay, and then we'll take the backs off of those. And then we're going to hover over, position that down and stick that onto our base card. You can see how that is then looking. So then these little elements that I've got that I've already glittered, we're going to start and stick these on now. So for the outer star, we're going to stick this one on flat. So I'm just going to whiz around the edge there just with a little bit of glue. And then we'll just stick these down. To there. And then we'll do the same with this one. Bit of PVA. Take that star and stick this one down over the top. Just going to position that there and stick it. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to take some foam pads in. And I'm going to trim a little bit of foam pad down. Just to go into the middle. So then we're going to take these central stars and I'm going to offset them like that. And then we'll do the same with this one here. Offset that there. So you can see how fab that then looks. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we'll do a little sentiment to go in the middle. Now, I know that Christine had some beautiful ribbon that she'd used on hers, but I'm making my project without the ribbon. So if you wanted to, you could wrap a piece of ribbon around the middle. And I'm sure lots of us have got stuff like this in our craft boxes at home. But I thought I would show you how you could do this without the ribbon in case you haven't got any. So what we're then going to do is we've taken our little star square die. So this launched with Happy Hobbies. And I've taken some silver mirror card and I've die cut the smallest square out from there. So we're going to pop that in the middle. And then I've taken one of the smaller square dies from the Gilded squares and cut that out. And that fits perfectly in the middle. So what we're then going to do is we are going to take our sentiment, which comes with the shooting star, stamp and die set. So we'll take our little sentiment, and I'm going to go and grab some silver embossing powder. Let me just go and grab that. It'll be 2 seconds. I've not put it out with my stuff. But I like to use a super fine silver for my sentiments, because I think it works a little bit nicer. So we're going to take our sentiment, we're going to ink up with our clear embossing ink, and then we're going to position this down into the middle and press. Gently lift that away. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to heat this up. Okay then, and then we are going to grab in our scrap paper again. Grab this one here, and we're going to do our little bit of edging again with our quickie glue pen and our Stardust Silver. So again, just getting those little tram lines and just follow that round with your glue pen. There we go, and that can go straight back into the jar there. Okay, and then we'll grab our finished card in. Okay, we're going to stick that down with a couple of foam pads. Just pop a foam pad on the back of here. And when you die cut this out and you get the little stars that fall out, don't bin those, because look at what you can do. So, hopefully stick this bit on straight for starters. There we go, hopefully. There. Okay, so if you save those little stars, what you can then do is we can take a couple of them so let me grab my glue. And we can just pop them on and around the sentiment. So because they're cut out of the mirror card, they will look really pretty. Like that. Okay, and then we've got all these little extra stars that we've got from the die cut out the background. So what we can do is take some of these, put a little foam pad on the back. You can just dot a few of these in and around the background. Pop that there. Foam pad was a little bit too small there. I got stuck on my finger. There we go. But we can just dot these in and around, kind of all over the background. So put that one there. Maybe just do one, couple more. Put one there. It's picking them up, that's the challenging part. There we go. Put that one there. And we do one more, put one here. There we go. So you can see how that's all started to come together. And then if you wanted to as well, I've got some of these like little, they were nail art jewels that I just bought online. You can maybe add one to the middle of each of the stars. And then sometimes what I think is quite pretty is just to dot a few kind of in and around the background. So take a bigger one to go in the middle of each of those, like that. And then we can maybe take some of these smaller ones. And we can just use these to dot in and around like this. And there we go. So another few just dotted around. There we go. And that would then be your first finished project. So that's using the shooting star, stamp and die set. So I'm going to show you another project that you can simplify this down a little bit. So for a smaller card, let me just have a little tidy round of the bits and pieces that I've got out here. So then for a smaller project, what we could do is move my scissors and everything around there. Move this out of my way. Okay. So for a smaller project, I've got a 5x7 card blank. Take a piece of our crystal white card and cut that down just a little bit smaller. And then we're going to start off working on another piece of crystal white that's 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to take the base one and I'm going to stick this down flat onto my card. So I'm going to just use a little bit of Dries Clear PVA. Okay. So we'll stick that down flat first. Okay, and then we're going to take our PVA glue and we're going to take our Diamante Sparkle glitter. Take a little scoop as well. Okay, and what we're going to do is use our PVA glue to kind of just edge along here. So you want to nuzzle the glue against the edge of that card and then kind of just drag it towards you. It sounds really weird. It does take a little bit of practice, and if you go off track, don't stress. It looks fine when it's dry. So there we go. Okay, and then we're going to take our Diamante Sparkle glitter. Just chuck this over the top. Now, as always, I'll list all of the materials in the little description below. So please do have a little look there. There we go. So you can see I've got a nice little glittery border going on there. So I'm going to put that well and truly out of my way so that I don't smudge it while we're doing the next part of the card. So we're going to grab in that piece of crystal white pearl card. I'm going to dust over it with our little anti-static like this. And then we're going to take our stamp. So I'm going to ink it up again with my clear embossing ink pad. So I'm using the exact same materials as we used for the first project. We're going to stamp this one down like this. And then we're going to lift that off the top. And then we're going to use our scrap paper to cover this with our Mercury glass embossing glitter. go. And I'm going to heat this up. Okay, and then we're going to pop that down and we're going to take our little anti-static bag, give a little dust around the background, and we're going to use this little dotty star stamp again to build up the background. So we're going to take our clear embossing ink pad, we're going to ink this little stamp up, and we're going to stamp it like all over this time. So I'm just moving around so I can kind of roughly see where that ink is. And the Wow ink is great because it's like a sticky ink rather than a wet ink, so it really holds the embossing glitters nicely. One more there, and then I'll flip that over. There we go. Any little fingerprints or anything that you've got, I'm just dusting off there. Sorry, you just have to bring it a little bit closer just so I can see because of the lights in here. And then we'll pop the lid onto there. There we go. And then I'm going to bring one in that I've already done, because what I've done on this one is I've glittered it up exactly the same as I've just shown you on the previous project, but then on two of the trails I've gone in with those little nail art gems and just added some little crystals onto there, so you can see how pretty that looks. So we'll use this one on our project. I'm going to take my glass slipper glitter, okay, and I'm just going to edge along each side here. So I'll edge this one. There we go. We'll do the next one. There we go. So this is like bling central, this one. Lots and lots of sparkle all over here. So we're going to flip this over and I'm going to pop some foam pads on the back. Again, if you were posting this, you can keep it flat and just stick it on with a bit of glue. Okay, and then we're going to take this one and just peel the backs off of here. Grab our base card in. Just stick that on the top there. Okay, then we'll pop that to one side. I'm going to take a little bit of scrap paper, it's crystal white, sorry. I'm going to dust that over and I'm going to take this star stamp. I'm going to ink it up and I'm going to stamp just the top star there. I'm going to cover that with a bit of mercury glass. Straight into the jar, tap away any excess. There we go, and we'll just give that a little second just to cool down. And while that does, I'm going to take my star die, which I've got here. It should be cool enough now. And we're going to just line that up over the top. And tape that down into position. And then we'll use our cutting plates. I'm going to use my base plate, my metal shim, my plastic shim and my cutting plate on the top. Through that goes. And then we'll grab this at the other side. Push this out. I'm only really interested in this large one in the middle for this part. Where have I put my little pokey tool down at? There it is. So we'll push that out like this. Okay, so that then gives us our star to layer up. So now we can start and take our glitters. So I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to just glitter it on the card, I think. No, I'm not. I'm going to glitter it. No, change my mind. Right, we're going to go in with our PVA glue. And we're going to just cover this in our glue. Like this. And then we're going to take a little bit of Stardust Silver, sprinkle that over. You can see how it has like that sandy texture. It's very cool. Gives that a little tap. Pop that to one side. And then I'll pop that back into the jar. Okay, and then we're going to take our little centre star. And I want my Diamante Sparkle glitter for this one. So what I'm then going to do is just take my PVA glue and just glitter up this little star. In the middle there. And then we'll layer this up. So I'm going to stick this base one down flat. Might be a little bit tricky to stick. Just with it still being a little bit wet, but we'll give it a go. So there we go. I'm going to double layer the foam pads on the back of this one. Stick that down there like that. You can see how that's coming together really nicely now. And then finally, in your little shooting star stamp and die set, you get a little die for a Christmas tree. And this tree, the sentiment fits perfectly onto the top of there. So we're going to take that little tree, we're going to die cut it out. And we're going to take our Wish Upon a Star This Christmas sentiment. Lift that away. Stamp my little sentiment there. There we go. And then we'll just do it in Mercury glass this time. Like I said, I do normally like to use my plainer colours for my sentiments, but it's not too bad. There we go. Okay, I'll just grab a little paintbrush just to get rid of where my low tack tape was for the die there. Powder's going back into the jar. And then we're just going to heat this up. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to pop a couple of foam pads just on the back. There we go. Bring our card in, position that down, and that would then be your finished project. So, same techniques, but 2 different cards. So let me grab the other one in that we've made. There we go. So if I stand this up, let me pop the other camera in. So we've got this one that we've just created here, and this one that we created a little bit earlier in the demo, but you can see how you can create these 2 beautiful projects. Let me get them the right way around. There we go, that's a bit better. You can create these 2 beautiful projects using the Shooting Star stamp and die set. So I promised you a little bit of a 2-for-1 today, so hopefully you've got some inspiration with that one. If you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are always posting lots of inspiration, lots of ideas on there, so please do hop over and have a little look. All of the materials that I've used for this particular tutorial will all be listed in the description below, and they are all available to buy on our website, which is www.chloescreativecards.co.uk. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye.